So really good to see you. Hope you all had a nice lunch. Unfortunately, for most of us, the weather was a bit too miserable to get outside and get a bit of fresh air, but hopefully you at least had a good break and are ready to get going. So you spent a lot of time in your breakout rooms before lunch looking at some of the priorities that the groups came up with yesterday. And now we're going to actually give you a chance to share what you've been talking about and share those priorities with the rest of the assembly. So I'll hand over to Kelly and we'll get going.
Brilliant. Well, welcome back, everyone, as Kayla said. So what we're doing now is we're going to hear from you. We want to hear the feedback from each of your groups who are going to present back the areas that you thought were priorities following the discussion this morning, which should be 1 to 2 per group per work stream. I'll let you know what work stream we're on, and I'll let you know who's going to be speaking at which point. So don't worry about any of that. Just follow my lead. So this is not final or a decision point, I think it's important to say just now. So everyone will have the chance to indicate their personal priorities at the end of the day, but hearing the feedback now is going to help to inform you about the discussions that happened in other groups and help you to think about the topics you may not have had the time to consider again today. So please do, as we're going along, capture any personal notes that you might want to have alongside you throughout the rest of the process in a way that works for you. You're very welcome and encouraged to do so. So how is this going to work? So I am going to tell you the work stream. I will then read out the name of the member and the group number. So that's the person who's volunteered to feedback. And you'll be invited up, and you have about 1 minute just to present the priorities that your group came up with for that work stream. I'll keep an eye on time, and I'll tell you verbally when that minute is up, although I do have this sign here if you would prefer a visual cue to let you know when that minute is up too. So the work stream we're going to start with first is work. So if you volunteered to feedback for work, please prepare to unmute yourself and to give your feedback for up to a minute. And after work, we'll move on to travel, and then home, then community, then diet and land, and then we'll end with lifestyle before I hand back to Ian to take us forward for the rest of the afternoon. Okay, so the first member who's up is Kelsey from Group 4 for the work stream. Kelsey, please unmute.
Hi everybody. There was 3 kind of main points within it that we had all kind of, for the most part, agreed were the most important. And we thought they were the develop decentralized rural work and working from home opportunities. I think that'd be kind of a good one to look at, especially in the current climate when everything's moving to home working with Corona and things like that. If we are going to be working from home more often, what are the options that we can look at in terms of energy and power that are maybe better for the environment? We looked at carbon taxes for big businesses was another one. There's a lot of focus on us as individuals and what we could do at home, but there's not a lot of talk around big businesses and what they're producing and, you know, what they're going to be doing to combat that. And the third one we looked at was lifelong learning. It's important that people have information around these things and the knowledge before they can make decisions. I think it's important to be well informed.
Brilliant, thank you. Perfectly to time as well. So Kelsey is a great lead there. Next up is Group 5 and Douglas.
Sorry, Kelly, I'm just, because Douglas I haven't sent him the notes, I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Of course it is.
But I'm, okay, brilliant. Douglas, if hopefully you're unmuted, and go ahead.
There we are. Can you hear me now?
Sure can.
Yes.
Lifetime, the first thing, retraining opportunities and education. Now, as far as I was concerned, that used to exist and was done away with 60-70s. That would normally form in the form of day release from business or training or certain courses like HNC. Lots of courses existed, but what happened was a lot of things you worked towards were insisting in full-time education, so that was stopped, and in reality training stopped as well. Development centralising in Euro work, and that was development. Carbon taxes for bigger businesses. Now, it's done there as carbon taxes, but to me, this should be done in a form of a carrot and a stick. If somebody actually does something that helps the thing, they should get money for it. And if they are not recommended they won't do the work, then they could possibly get taxed for it. Reduce the need to travel to work, make work travel necessary, and by making the cost of it more reasonable. The difficulty with that is in Scotland is we've got big areas between business centres. It's not always that easy to do. There we are.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Douglas.
Thank
Much
you.
appreciated. Cheers. Next, we have group number 6, Lewis.
Hi. So, yeah, we were also very keen on the decentralized and rural work, working from home, etc. And we thought that the pandemic has really given us an unprecedented opportunity for learning about working from home, or video conferencing and things like that. It's really forced us into the future, forced us to think about new ways of doing things. And we think that that could be a really powerful opportunity for meaningful change that can impact the environment positively. And that'll, we can also benefit from reviewing ways of working to see how workers can make things more environmentally friendly in terms of travel as well. So for example, helping their employees do lift shares, making sure that local areas are managed by someone who's in charge of the whole place, so they can coordinate lifts and things better. As well as that, we also thought that there was a priority in the lifelong learning and education section, retraining where jobs have been lost, helping people be informed, so when they're making decisions that they might not have thought were impacting the environment, such as deciding where to open a new branch or how to arrange their employees or their shifts, then given that training, they can also benefit from the environmental side of those decisions and make sure that that's something that they consider.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lewis. Much appreciated. Next up, we have group 11, Claire C.
Hi.
Okay.
Our group talked a lot about education, this idea of lifelong green learning from primary or nursery school all the way up to university. And beyond that, we also talked a little bit about green learning centres, especially for people that haven't been in education recently. We talked a bit about the carbon tax, and a few of the members are very clear to make sure it's not just a tax that somebody can avoid. And I suggested maybe some kind of green governing body, if there's not one already, such as the SSC is to the care services at the moment. The last thing that we talked about was decentralized work, more working from home, but we've also talked about how that's probably been kickstarted by COVID, and there's probably not as much to do with it now.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Claire. Thank you. And finally, for work, we have group 13. That's Rick. We have Rick with us from group 13. Hey, Rick. So
There.
all good.
Okay. Yeah, so our group, we had to look at lifelong learning, technology, and innovation. And I think we all agreed that all these can be integrated together. Yeah. For instance, lifelong learning. If there's an innovative idea from an individual or a group, somebody with experience from before can bring that in a new aspect to the venture. And innovation, lifelong learning, and technology can have partnerships together to help them accelerate the new uses that are coming about with technology. And technology, like 3D printing, all that kind of stuff, can enhance and give benefit in the integration and collaboration of people's efforts. And the encouragement of opportunities to integrate the different things in technology to the great Scottish ability to innovate. And the person who innovates has to have reward given and taken to society. And society can use both those things together.
Great stuff. Thanks so much, Rick. Thank you. Okay, so that was work. We're now moving on to travel. So remember, around 1 minute feedback, and we have group 1, David B, up first. Hi, David. You're just on mute there.
Right, there we go. That's better.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you.
We focused on the improved public transport infrastructure for the main reason we thought that that one was the most important one, and without that one, none of the rest of them really fit into the bigger picture. But looking at public transport, we need a system that's fairness for all. That's obviously encapsulating urban places as well as rural places. And it also probably needs a fair subsidised system, because generally public transport is pretty expensive in Scotland. And that's even with some areas being subsidised, because I know, excuse me, I know in my own area it's particularly expensive public transport not to go very far at all. Another focus was electric cars and the transition to them, and really how it needs to move a little bit quicker, the increase in charging ports. Well, stop.
Oh, don't worry, it's not a hard stop. It's more a finish your sentence kind of
Yeah.
stuff. You're all good.
Yeah. And really, and going away from combustible engines as well. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, David. Thank you. Next, we've got group 2 and we have Vita.
Hello. We were very similar to David's group actually as well. So we focused on public transport and the infrastructure of that being improved across the whole of Scotland to make it a viable choice. And we focused on the fact that public transport might look different in cities and rural areas, and how public transport can be used to benefit people as well. So for example, having public transport that you can work on or have meetings on as well. And we also looked at the infrastructure needs to be improved for cycling as well, and that needs to be more supported throughout Scotland. And the transition for electric vehicles needs to be made easier and to be made fair as well. So the costs of that need to be made fair. And then finally, we looked at the culture of delivery of purchases. So we need to start changing in our minds about what actually it means to have a vehicle and if we need it or not, and the purchases that we're making around travel as well.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much, Rita. Next, we have group 3 and it's Susie. Susie, you're just on mute there. Yeah, sorry everyone, we've got you all muted, so everyone needs to unmute.
Yeah, so we talked also about fairness and making transitions to doing things differently, equitable, both in terms of availability. So it's not just cities where there are electric buses. I know that happens in Glasgow, but also in rural areas, making it possible for people to travel to work from rural areas. There are, for example, no buses from where I live on a Sunday, so I couldn't do a job today if I didn't have a car. Also, we talked about how important investment in infrastructure to make these things happen has to come from governments and banks and industry, as was said in the video. And in terms of the transition to electric vehicles, how about all commercial vehicles being electric? so that if people do need to order things online, all the vans are electric. And we talked about, the changing culture around transport as well. Do we need to use our cars for every trip? Do we need to take as many trips as we do? And that we can influence each other, but also Scotland can be a leader on this. We've got a massive opportunity with COP26 being in Glasgow next year. So
brilliant. Thank you, Susie. Next up, Group 12, Rachel, who is one of our facilitation team.
Hello. Yeah, sorry, I got dubbed in it by my group. So we kind of, same as a lot of the other groups, and we've kind of amalgamated some of the main themes. But for us, the priorities were reducing the number of single occupancy car journeys, and that would mean having to improve public transport systems and supporting those in rural communities. We also thought about keeping lives local so that the need for travel is reduced. So again, kind of creating infrastructure to prioritise that 20-minute community, encouraging businesses to work locally, and again, supporting rural communities.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. That was well under a minute as well. Next up, we have group number 10, Forbes. Are you with us, Forbes? Hiya.
Hello. I think it was just echoing some of the things that David and Vita was saying. Public transport, just making it more affordable and reliable, really. Possibly redesigning it to meet the needs of the public. Obviously, not just for work, but also, shopping, dropping kids off, and all this sort of stuff. Also, in the electric cars, they seem to be like too expensive, and also the infrastructure doesn't seem to be in place as yet. Maybe a possible alternative would be the hydrogen car, perhaps. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's us.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Forbes. Yeah, I'm sure you can see that you've got quite a lot of commonalities coming up across some of the groups. So hopefully you're tuning into them. So home, we next have group 3, David. We're on to home now. David, are you with us from group 3? That's all right. We'll come back to David. Marion from group 5. Hi, Marion.
You're on mute.
Hi.
Floor is yours.
Is that me?
That's you. You're all good.
We focused on making new build homes as environmentally friendly as possible and as durable as possible and as affordable as possible. And we also focused on making it easier for owners to upgrade their energy efficiency at home to make it, again, more affordable and the right resources used.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Marion. Thank you. Next up, we have group 7, Suzanne. Talking about home.
Yeah, the themes we selected as most important were making it easier for owners to upgrade the energy efficiency of their homes and ensuring that new built homes in Scotland are as environmentally friendly as possible. So thinking about retrofitting existing homes, our reasons were that this would create a lasting benefit over time and that it's more efficient to use existing buildings rather than build new ones. It would improve people's quality of life, and it's only fair to support those who are in older homes as well as those buying new. However, we were aware of the need to address cost and where the money's coming from for upgrades. We talked about share repair schemes operated by local authorities to help people who are jointly responsible for a building and wondered if this could be built on. The schemes can vary across local authorities, so we felt we need a common policy and investment with landlord accountability for repairs. For new built homes, we wanted to make sure they last just as long as the Victorian or Georgian buildings have. It's easier to build them right to start with than to try to upgrade them after the fact. Just one more sentence, they need to be preferably with green tech already built in, like solar panels, so the costs on the housing developer.
Brilliant, expertly done, Suzanne. Thank you very much. Jamie, Group 8. And then after Jamie, it's going to be David, and then it's going to be Noah.
Yes, perfect. So we were looking at sort of like homes and lifestyle, and one of the things that we looked at, there's so many good ideas that were brought forward, but the main thing that we thought would be appropriate to look at was that ensuring that new homes were built as environmentally friendly as possible. And the second one was that it'd be making it easier for homes to upgrade the existing homes to be more energy efficient.
Hello to your cat too. Thanks so much, Jamie. Thank you. Group 3, David. David, are you with us from Group 3 to talk about homes? I'll go on. Ah, David, there you are. Welcome. Can't quite hear you though. No.
I'll call him. I know what the problem is.
All right, brilliant. Juliet's going to give you a quick call. We'll move on to Noah, but I'll come back to you for sure, David. Group 9, Noah.
Yeah, well, we're not really going against the grain at all. We had the idea of improving current houses and standardizing the building of new houses as well. Felt it was a good foundation to improve other things. So yeah, same as everyone else, really.
Stuff. That was nice and succinct then. Thank you. Thanks, Noah. Just one final check with David if you're back with us, but otherwise, don't worry, we'll come back to you a little bit later on. It's all right, we'll come back to you, David. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to community, but we will loop back just to hear again from Group 3 on the home front. So communities, Group 10, Forbes, you're back to kick us off.
Hello again. So I think the important takeaways for our group was helping communities understand what they can do, while also identifying the impacts of climate change on different communities. Also empowering communities to come together, share knowledge and experience through local initiatives. For instance, community-run vegetable gardens, shop to sell their locally grown or made products. Maybe also repair and reuse initiatives, upcycling type of thing. And also the 20-minute community, so everything redesigning communities, so everything's 20 minutes away, but where that would be possible, we don't know, but possibly look at that, yes, and that's that.
Good stuff, thanks for kicking us off there, Forbes. Next up, Group 11, John C.
Thank you. We looked at all of these various comments, and what came out of it was we had a general understanding that there was a need for local input. And unfortunately, governments have a tendency to approach problems centrally. It's a built-in bias they have. But when we're talking about these global issues, we're really looking at communities and what happens there. And our decision was that the local community is where the expertise is on their particular problems. And there is no standard community. Someone living in the Highlands or the Islands or Glasgow or Edinburgh, they're all communities, but they are starkly different in the problems that climate change will bring to them. And so we think that the education should take place at that level, and the accommodation should be planned, and there should be authority as well at the local level to make the changes they need with support from central government so that they can reach the best conclusions for their local community. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you very much, John. Next we have Rachel back from Group 12.
Hi. So for us, our main themes and priorities for communities was the idea of the 20-minute community. And we thought that this encompassed the need for increased community understanding and exploring possibilities of making change locally. We also thought it was really important to future-proof infrastructure across Scotland to ensure it's responsive to community needs. But we thought that the first step that would have to overarch all of these is providing education and learning for communities, but also governments, local governments, businesses, anybody, to understand the needs of those communities before pushing through changes.
Fantastic. Thank you to Rachel and to group number 12. So group 14, Trish.
Right, our group was kind of going along similar kind of ideas, rather than looking at priorities, because we kind of felt like everything was pretty much a priority. Things are so interlinked that we were more looking at as a goal to achieve. So we were looking at enabling the 20-minute community, and we do that by either adapting or building the infrastructure that needs to make this happen. But we should not lose the focus on people with low incomes so that they are not left behind in the process.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Trish, and to group 14. And again, we're seeing some common themes coming up, I think. Group number 15, Ellie, just to finish us off in the community work stream.
Hi there. Yes, we were in alignment with the other groups as well. So yeah, the need for kind of a community understanding and empowerment of communities, so they really kind of feel that they understand what the scope is for possibilities of making change for their communities. And yeah, the idea of the 20-minute community where everything you need is within a 20-minute walk, which is a model that we felt could be applied to both urban and rural communities. And then kind of from another angle, restructuring communities to enable them to have this 20-minute community idea where you look at planning, design and development, and making that a priority.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Ellie. You've clearly all had some deeply interesting conversations in a relatively short space of time. So it's brilliant to hear your feedback. Really, really appreciating it. And Ellie, just to let you know that you're going to be first up for the next group. I'm just going to come back to David to see if you're back with us, David, for home from group 3.
Yes.
Yay!
Can you hear me now? Good.
Yes. Brilliant. Welcome, David.
I actually discovered what the problem had been. There's a small button on my headset control that had got pushed inadvertently to mute the headset or the microphone.
Easily done.
Okay, so this is homes. We felt quite strongly that government has to be the driver for this, and that so they should take the initiative to make and widely publicize grants to be made available to help the transformation of our domestic homes, and that in addition, they must also control the quality of workmanship by companies who are allowed to offer services to carry out this upgrading work, because we want the work to be done in a high quality and a good standard of work. Also, we feel that government should develop the infrastructure for district heating systems so that the entire community can be heated from a single source, which then makes future upgrading much more simple. The whole community can be upgraded at one go. And finally, there should be a carrot and stick from governments, incentives for compliance and penalties for non-compliance. Done.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, David. Brilliant to be able to hear your voice there. Thank you. Okay, we're now on to diet and land. So Ellie, it's you again, group 15.
Hi. Well, in terms of diet, our group identified a priority to encourage personal responsibility of people taking responsibility for changes in eating and habits, which would be supported through learning about the impact of your dietary choices, and that would hopefully encourage people to make more positive changes in the way they shop and eat, which will have knock-on effects like reducing plastic and eating less meat and dairy. And then in terms of land use, we looked at the priority of reviewing land use, land ownership and the way it's regulated. And that would lead to looking at opportunities identified, such as restoring landscape away from traditional agricultural uses, rethinking that, looking at rewilding, regeneration of habitats, and more natural-based methods of local food production.
Perfectly timed. Thanks, Ellie. Next up, we have Group 14, and that's David. David, do we have you?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, you've just gone on mute, David. There you are. All good.
Bit of a disaster there. So for diet and land use, we also looked at the same issues, the same priorities that Ellie just outlined, and you can view that from both demand and supply side. So from the demand side, we also picked out the importance of encouraging personal responsibility and changes to eating habits, coupled with educational support for learning about the impact of choices. And this could be something simple like cooking lessons to provide alternative meal plans that doesn't use so much meat, so it's less carbon intensive. And this is all with the hope that carbon intensive consumption would fall through personal choice, through reduction both at home and also knock-on effect through commercial waste. And also a higher uptake of homegrown foodstuff would then allow the reduction of carbon associated with importing and exporting food produce, which we go here. From the supply side, in terms of the land use, the key issue there was the land use and regulation. We felt that a joined up approach to land planning would maximise the best use of land and avoid national and local planning being done in silos. So, for example, if you're building new housing, some thought would be given to the local amenities such as schools and office space to kind of reduce emissions from travel. So that's
great. Brilliant. Thank you very much, David. Okay, we're now coming on to Group 13, Coppola.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, welcome.
In our group, we thought about making our everyday food choices less wasteful and more sustainable. We thought you could achieve this by reducing food waste and the packaging that goes with that. And in turn, if you grew and bought more food that's locally sourced, then you'd be able to achieve some of those goals. And in terms of land use, we thought about restoring nature where we can, but with respect to for communities and the ability for those communities to grow their own food locally. So we're thinking that you could rewild and restore peat bogs and landscape, which would be able to absorb some of the emissions coming from the local food production, which we'd be able to do. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Group number 9 and Shona now.
Hi. Our first priority that we took from the diet and land use was to reduce meat and dairy consumption, just thinking along the lines of how we can make the biggest change really in fighting climate change. We did wonder if this might be quite a difficult one to target, but thought we probably shouldn't not choose it just because it's a challenging one. For our second priority, and we were maybe less agreed about this, but to choose the grow and buy more locally sourced produce, with the thinking that that in turn would have an effect on land use and farming practices, just sort of consumer-led, basically.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Shona. And then the final group feeding back in diet and land, we have Group 2, and that's Kirsten.
Hi. Pretty much the same as the rest of the other groups, really. So in terms of diet, we felt the biggest impact would be to encourage personal responsibility for people, with product disclosures around carbon costs and things like that, because it would obviously make people more conscious about what types of things they're buying, and we're also kind of emphasising on that to encourage people to purchase locally sourced produce. And then in terms of land, there were about 3 or 4 key themes that came out of the jam board, and we started talking about the rewilding, but didn't feel like you could do that alone, so we ended up suggesting that we should also include the land regulation and farming practices as well, and put it together, because I think that any initiative would kind of have to work hand in hand.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Sorry, that's just my doorbell going off if anyone heard that. I don't know who it is. Brilliant. Thank you. So that brings the diet and the land section to a close. We're just moving on now to lifestyle. And I'm going to start with group 8 and Ben. So this is the final group of feedback.
Hello. So our group agreed. So the top 2 ideas we had for our group was supporting local produce. So this would have the benefit of investing in local communities and also reducing our carbon footprint on imported goods. And our second idea was we need to rethink our consumer culture. So we need to reduce how much we buy. We need to look at whether we really need these items, and also reusing and fixing items before we buy new again.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you. So group number 7 next, and Sandy.
Hi. So group 7, we looked at a lot of the points, but 2 of them popped up from the majority of people. So the first one was, do we need to rethink the consumer culture? The statement that because I can, I will. It was mostly questions we got from this. So the biggest one was, do I need? I think we all need to answer ourselves. Then it came down to, is it easier just to simply buy new nowadays? How to make repairing work, buying so cheap. So if it's £80 to repair a pair of shoes that cost £5, it makes no sense. So we need to look at that. And is advertising so heavily pushed towards buying new that needs to be looked at? And one thing that did come out with, though, is it's really important to make sure people have a choice, and they're free to choose what they want to buy, and it's not pushed, so it's still going to be an individual choice. And we then looked at changing business method in Scotland to focus on local manufacturing. And this one we kind of had questions and maybe some answers, but it was a possibility to increase tax receipts, to reskill people out of oil and gas to maintain Scotland and make Scotland more self-sufficient. And that will allow us to hopefully monitor our own footprint, make it easier rather than problem further afield. Local companies might be able to give feedback if they're supported more and reduce travel miles and shipping.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sandy. And group 7. Right, next up, it's group 6 and Lewis.
Hi.
Hello.
So we were also thinking the priority was around the consumer culture, and in particular, we were thinking we need to be reminded that we don't need to buy new things all the time, even though adverts often convince us that we do. And we kind of tie this into the other section, the boycotting companies that do environmental damage, for companies that, particularly in producing technology, that have planned obsolescence of their mobile phones or laptops or whatever it is, that deliberately make things that break within a year or 2 so that the user is encouraged to buy a newer model, and that also deliberately make repairs prohibitively expensive. So you're likely to throw something out even though it's only been with you a year. And the other priority that we had was that changing the business model in Scotland to focus on local manufacturing, kind of bringing production back to Scotland in a way that benefits the country, which will also cut down on the emissions from importing things that we could have produced in our own country in Scotland.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lewis. Brilliant. And then last but definitely not least, we have group 1 and Colin to bring us to a close for the lifestyle section.
Hi.
In the lifestyle area, our group focused on two priorities, and the first was supporting local produce. Buying locally helps reduce both travel and wastage and would apply across the whole of Scotland. It also supports community with local jobs and develops community spirit, and there may also be a benefit post-Brexit. And the second thing we looked at was the boycotting of companies, but we kind of looked at it as supporting or boycotting companies based on their environmental impact. So choosing where consumers spend money is important, and consumers have a lot more power than they think to be able to change business. And with clear information about carbon costs, they could make better decisions for that, and perhaps incentives for consumers to make environmentally friendly choices and for businesses to move towards more environmentally friendly practices.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Colin. Great, that's all of our feedback just for now. So thank you to everyone that fed back, and of course, to everyone having discussions.
I think we've missed someone. We've got a message that Kelsey we've missed out from Group 4.
Ah, Kelsey from Group. My apologies, Kelsey.
I mean,
yours.
I'm happy not to do it.
No, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. Go for
it. So let me just have a look. So the two that we kind of focused on was support local, which kind of tied in with the bringing manufacturing over to Scotland. I think if things were more local, we can control the supply chain a lot more and how things are delivered and transported rather than shipping things from abroad. And the second thing we looked at was the boycotting, holding businesses accountable. We as individuals, we have a lot of pull. We are the ones using these companies, and we can decide whether or not to use them, and the likes.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Kelsey. Apologies about that. But as I was saying, brilliant to hear from you all. Really appreciate you all giving feedback there. That went really smoothly, and you all kept pretty much to time, so that's fantastic. Okay, right, we're going to move on. I'm going to hand over to Ian now, who is going to tell us what we're doing next. Ian, you ready? Over to you.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Kelly. Yeah, so I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about the context for the afternoon session. You've all been brought together as members of the Assembly to answer this question that we've heard many times now. How should Scotland change to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? So to answer this, we really need to understand what is meant by fair and what's meant by effective. In weekend 3, we're going to examine what makes change effective, but this afternoon we're going to explore more about fairness in relation to climate change in Scotland. And when we talk about fairness, one of the first things we should consider is fairness across incomes. So across Scotland, across the world, our carbon footprint, the energy required for our lifestyles, is not the same across different interest groups. So I think if I can just share one slide with you to illustrate this point. So hopefully you can see this diagram here. The graph I'm sharing now comes from research produced this year by John Barrett and Anne Owen. And it shows 20 different income groups across the UK and what the corresponding lifestyle means in terms of their carbon footprint. So you can see that group 20, so over there on the right, which is the highest income, also has the greatest footprint. And group 1 on the left is the lowest income group in the UK and has one of the lowest carbon footprints corresponding to their lifestyle. So you can see that the higher your income, the greater your carbon footprint. And this links to fairness when we start talking about who pays for the action we need to tackle climate change. So for example, John and Anne point out that the current action to reduce emissions from our energy is paid for by adding some of the cost onto our gas and electricity bills. But for someone in the lower income group, you can see that their gas and electricity bill is a greater proportion of their overall footprint. For someone in the higher income group, that's a much smaller part of their overall carbon footprint. But there aren't currently additional costs borne by these groups for other activities like their travel, recreation, purchase of goods. So what that all boils down to, what it essentially means is that lower income groups end up paying a higher proportion of their income to tackle climate change than higher income groups do, when in reality it's the higher income groups that typically contribute more to the problem. So let me just stop sharing that for a second and go on, because that's really kind of part of the context about starting to think about what we consider to be fair. For our next talks, you're going to hear first from Kevin Anderson, who will talk about the Paris Agreement, the targets there, and what those targets mean in terms of Scotland's fair proportion of what Kevin calls the global carbon pie. And then following Kevin, you'll hear from Tahseen Jaffrey and a number of other speakers who will give their perspectives on what fairness means within Scotland and the importance of hearing from and recognising different people with different voices. So if we could pass over to Kevin.
Hello. Hopefully my mute's off now. Hi, I'm Kevin Anderson, and I'm one of the evidence leads here at the with the Scottish Assembly, Scottish Government. What you're going to see now is a short film outlining why I see the responses to climate change as needing to be much more sort of challenging and immediate than we're normally prepared to talk about. It's just worth bearing in mind that I think about 80%, over 80% of all of the energy used in Scotland is still fossil fuels, basically oil and gas, and that's the same for the UK more generally. Now, after the talk over the next week or so, I'll also be posting some additional information that might help you when it comes to the future weekends in thinking about your advice to the Scottish Government. But for now, you can get to watch the film, and if you've got any questions, then I think there's a breakout later on this afternoon. So I look forward to hearing back from you then.
From Professor Tahseen Jaffrey, as Ian said. Okay, that's our 2 minutes. Hopefully you're finding it helpful just to pause for a little bit after we hear all these inputs. And again, thanks to Kevin for the video. Okay, we're going to move on now to the video that Ian has already introduced, the one by Professor Tahseen Jaffrey. So please can we load that up? And just to say, after this video, we'll also just be spending another minute to think about the same questions. Okay, everyone, I hope you enjoyed those videos there. I think lots of different speakers, lots of different perspectives. So hopefully that was really interesting for you. So again, we're just going to spend 2 minutes just sitting with our thoughts, making some notes as we want to, just thinking about what Tahseen, John, Susie, Ailey, Jim, Richard, Sophie, and that example that you heard there from South Seeds. What does what you've heard there mean for making a fair response to the climate emergency? What is most important to remember when thinking about how Scotland can tackle the climate emergency in a fair and effective way? So again, just 2 minutes.
Okay, so hopefully you've had some time to sort of think through and note down some key points there. There's a lot of things there about different perspectives on fairness. Before we go into the breakout groups really and start exploring this idea of fairness, I'm going to suggest that people just take like 5-minute breaks. So we'll start again at about 5:02. You'll be in your breakout rooms. We'll move you over into your breakout rooms during the break. So go and have a break, grab a cup of tea, have a stretch, and then you'll be into your breakout groups for the big discussion this afternoon.
Hey, welcome back. We're just waiting for everyone to come back into the main room. Should just be a few seconds. All right, welcome back. We're just waiting for everyone to rejoin the main room. We'll get started in a moment. Hi everyone, welcome back. Okay, it looks like we have everyone back in the main room. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed those discussions again. So just to briefly explain that we're going to be collecting all of the propositions and all the work that you did there on fairness that you've created, and we're going to do some consolidation of them, so some bringing of them together. And we expect that some groups may have come up with some similar propositions. So we're going to send that all back to you to review in January before we then come to consider them at our next meeting when we come back together in January. Kayla, I'm going to hand over to you to explain what we're doing next.
Okay, so the very last thing that we're going to do today, really, is to go back to the topics we were looking at yesterday afternoon, and again we looked at them again this morning and heard back from some of the different groups around where there was different priorities and why some things seemed particularly important to be addressing. And the reason we're doing this is so that we can, when we go into our separate groups in weekends 3 and 4 and look at the different topics, it's so we, as a whole assembly, we're kind of tasking those members who are given the responsibility to go and look at, say, for example, work and travel. We're giving them a sense of what the assembly as a whole has identified as some priorities. Now, these are not decisions, and it won't necessarily be the only thing that they look at, because they'll also be hearing lots more evidence and getting a lot more information that may help them identify some additional priorities, but it'll be a starting point for them to start thinking, this is what the assembly as a whole has asked us to focus on and to make sure that we're looking at what we can do about it. So what we're going to do is actually ask you all now individually to reflect back on what we heard, think about what we heard earlier today and what you discussed earlier today and yesterday, and then individually vote on the 3 in each section that seem most important to you. So we're going to do this using an online voting poll. Now, I'm just pasting into the chat a link to a Mentimeter survey. Now, people should be able to, most people should be able to just go in, click on that link, and it will open in a new window for you. I know some people have had a few problems with this. You might be able to copy it and paste it into a new browser window. But if anyone's really, really struggling with it and can't get it up, you can either give a quick message to Juliet and we'll see if we can get it for you. Otherwise, it won't be finalized, it won't be stopped. So even if we need to catch up with you after the meeting and get your answers in, we'll be able to do that. And I do want to remind...
Can you hear me all right, Kayla?
I can, yes.
What comes up is Mentimeter.
Yeah.
And it's got are you a cat person, a dog person?
It does. So yes, that is the first question. So anyone who's got there, if you just want to answer that first question, everybody, and we'll see.
What the clock on the chat?
You have to click into the chat and then there'll be a little link there.
Sorry, what's the purpose of this question?
Just to make just a little bit of fun for people to get in on it, so I can make sure how many people have actually managed to get into the survey.
I'll try it, but this is when my computer went down before.
Okay. So the first one is just a little bit of, a little bit of a joke, just to sort of check that everyone's managed to get in and able to answer the questions.
The thing about using the car as a status symbol, people are
Okay.
not like that anymore, are they?
Sorry, can we, we're just having a look at this first one to let people see and make sure we're all right there. So the first one I've showed you, we've got most of the group in, which is great. You'll still be able to join. And at the moment, what we're showing is we've got a lot more dog people than cat people in our room today. Just a reminder too that it's really only the members that we want to be doing this. So any facilitators or other observers, please don't do. Now, what you'll see if you go onto the next screen, like it'll go forward, are the big question that we've been thinking about. So what we're really asking you is, which do you think are most important to focus on to achieve fair and effective change to tackle the climate emergency? And then you can now work through the next 6 questions that will go through about what is, the priorities that we identified yesterday and that we discussed this morning and that the group's fed back on. So I'll let you just all work through that and I'll stop sharing my screen. And we'll just give people a couple of minutes to work through that. So we're all learning new skills here. All right, I'm going to start sharing some of the results. I know some people are still doing the last ones, but we'll get a chance to see what people are prioritizing so far. And hopefully everyone will be able to see this on my screen. So when we looked at travel, there's a clear one that was prioritized by almost everybody in the room about improving the public transport infrastructure. And we've also got another sort of one that's prioritized by about half of the people that were able to answer at this point about making the transition to electric vehicles easier, and then followed by ensuring rural communities are not disadvantaged. So, we've got some clear focus there for the group when they come together in weekend 3. When we get to travel, to work, we're a bit more spread out here. Priority there, the main one is around this sort of lifelong learning and that being able to actually change and move into different careers, build up training, all of these types of things there. And then the decentralized working from home types of opportunities, that changing ways that the last several months have shown us that many of us are able to work. And then spread across the rest of the priorities that were identified by the in work topic. Home. So again, we've got a clear priority there about ensuring that new built homes in Scotland are as environmentally friendly as possible. And the second one there, making it easier for owners to upgrade the energy efficiency of their homes. So really looking at how we support people to be able to do that so the burden maybe doesn't always have to fall on the individuals. And then a spread across the rest as well to show that they're all quite valuable there. When we, why is it not moving on for me? I'll do. So we've got home and then we've got communities. And two clear top runners there. A lot of people, and you'll know when we were doing feedback earlier, a lot of people were talking about this idea of a 20-minute community, where actually, it's about that smaller scale that everything you need should be able to be accessed by you within that sort of space. We've got this idea of future-proofing very much, future-proofing the infrastructure across Scotland so that it is able to respond better to what communities do need. And the third one there, that's the purple one, ensuring rural communities have local facilities or nearby facilities that reduces the need to travel quite so far all the time. So that's 4 of the topics down. And then we move on to diet and land use. And again, a clear priority there for people about reduced food waste and packaging. Seems as a big focus there. And then we've got, what have we got? Grow and buy more locally sourced produce. And that was definitely something people talked about in the feedback earlier today as well. And then the next one there about review farming practice standards, grants and subsidies. So all of these things are actually interlinked to each other as to how we're both producing and consuming food. And the last one for us, again, a bit more spread out this time. And I think there's a couple of people might still be answering this one, so it might jump even as I'm talking to it, but that's fine, you can keep answering. So the top one at the moment sitting there is support local produce. So again, in the way that we're consuming. The idea of rethinking consumer culture, that just because I can, I need to have all of these things. And that change the business model in Scotland to focus on local manufacturing. So again, key things that were fed back in the sessions earlier that have stuck in people's minds. So what we'll be doing is we'll help the people who weren't able to get into it or people who just need to sort of get back to it after their internet settles down. So we'll make sure, so some of the answers might shift very slightly from what we see on the screen right now, but you know that, you know, the vast majority of you answered, so it's unlikely to swing too much. We've got some clear areas for focus to task the groups when they come together in weekends 3. So thank you very much for that. And I'm going to hand over, I think, to Ian now, just to sort of start winding us up for the day.
Yeah, thanks for that Keil. That was really interesting. So yeah, just to close the weekend, really. Thanks everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this second weekend of the Scotland's Climate Assembly. I hope you found today informative and interesting and maybe even fun on a few occasions. So for our next 2 weekends, we'll start building everything we've learned in weekend 1 and 2, considering how change can be effective in particular, and then beginning to drill into the detail, the naughty detail of those 3 streams: work and travel, homes and communities, diet and lifestyle. So look forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Okay, thanks to that.
Have a good Christmas, everybody.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
We're not just done yet.
We're not quite finished.
No, I know.
We're not done just yet.
going?
Just talking to you again.
We've just got a couple more minutes. Hi everyone. So we've just got a couple more minutes before we close up completely. So the first thing to do is I'm just going to invite someone from the research team just to say something for a few seconds, and then I've got a few reminders and some thanks to you. Nadine from the research team, are you around?
I am, yes, thanks.
Yeah,
I'm glad you got in there before everybody disappeared. So yeah, I'm part of the research team along with Evelyn and Nick, who some of you have met already. And this is just a reminder really for you to take a few minutes to complete our survey about your experience this weekend. This is also just a chance for you to stop and reflect, because it has been a very rich and very full weekend. It is voluntary, of course, but we would love to hear from all of you. So if you haven't already signed up, then please consider doing so. The link to the consent form and the survey will be emailed to you, and there's also links in the chat there. Remember that your responses are anonymised, and the information that you give is vital, really, for helping us understand how the Assembly is working. So if you've got any questions, you can get in contact with us. Our contact details are in the forms there. So thanks very much in advance.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nadine. So can I also ask if Ruth is with us, the convener, to...
Sure. Hi, Kelly. Thank you. And this is just a chance for me to say my thanks as well to everybody. It's been great to be able to drop in on some group sessions. I'm bringing apologies from Josh. He's not been well, but he'll be back, let's hope, tomorrow. We're going to have a drop-in session tomorrow from 6 till 7, informal chat. Anyone that wants to come along, that information will be sent out to you. And if you want to get hold of us, either Josh or myself at all about anything, this is our address. It's in the chat. We're available just for anything you want to feedback or any questions you've got, any concerns you've got that haven't been addressed any other way. Give us a shout and we'll be here for you. But great to see you and see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye, folks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ruth. And I promise I'm the last person now, and then we can all go. So first of all, I just want to thank you all for staying with us this weekend and all of your brilliant contributions and your feedback. I know for many of you it involved getting used to a bit of new technology and ways of working, but I hope that you felt supported and that you know that we're here to support you throughout. So please, if you're worried about absolutely anything, if you just want a little bit of extra support to use the tech, let us know and we're there for you, because we really, really want you to stick with us and to see this through and to keep hearing your voices. So again, thanks to the research team, to the facilitation team, to the secretariat, to our evidence leads, and to absolutely everyone that supported this weekend. And thank you so much to the members for sharing so freely and honestly with us. We hope you'll continue like that throughout the rest of the process. A couple of reminders. The first being, as you've heard, there is a convening session tomorrow at 6 p.m. if anybody does want to join that. You are going to receive an email just as this session closes today, which contains a bit of information, but it also contains a link to the website and the videos that you've seen over the course of today. And you can share those videos on to your friends and family and absolutely anyone else in the world, should you want to do that. So look out for those emails. And if there's any questions, anything you need, get in touch with our support team. We'll see you back here 9th and 10th of January for weekend 3. Really, really looking forward to it. But that just leaves me to wish you a really wonderful festive break in the new year, and we'll see you on the flip side.